So here we are, ready to create our first app. Now, as long as we've done all of our planning properly, all should go well. So making sure that you've exported all of your assets, ready to go straight into Godot. So let's open up Godot. You'll find yours in your C drive or under the Start menu. For me, for convenience, I've just put it here. So let's open up Godot. When you open up Godot, you're going to get this blank screen that says, do you want to use the asset library? We don't want that just yet, so let's press cancel on that. If you haven't created any projects before, you're going to get a blank screen. If you have and you don't see your projects here, you can press the scan button and go and find them. But for today, we're just going to say new project. You're going to get this warning that says, look, this file isn't empty, or this folder isn't empty, so you need to create a new folder. All new Godot projects need to be started from a completely blank slate or a blank folder. So let's press browse and let's go and find our stuff. Now, one word of warning, if you are working from school or college, you're probably on a network drive. So you need to come up to this area here and you need to select your N drive from this menu, or whatever the kind of networks called at your place. So N drive from here, if you're at home or on your local systems, this is fine. You can use the root directory or the C drive and that'll work fine. Once you've selected the N drive, you can then go and find your project where we saved all of our assets. So for me, it's in the desktop. I suspect yours will be in your documents. So let's go digital student, first app. Now this is where I want to create it, but because it's not an empty folder, I need to create a new folder. So let's say create folder and give it a name. So I'm going to call it my first app and then press OK. We also need to do it here as well. So let's do it again. My first, first app, and then we can press select current folder. And now we've got the green light. Before we press create and edit, let's just change this project name as well to the appropriate name. So mine's just going to be called my first app. Okay, you can call yours whatever's appropriate for your thing. Now it's all done. Now we've got this green light, we can press create and edit. So go ahead and get to this point. Now we're in Godot, and the first thing you're going to see is this 3D screen. This is basically showing you all the things that Godot can do, which is it's massive actually, although it looks like a fairly simple interface. But the first button we need to press is this 2D button, which gives us our 2D screen. Now, we do need to set it up as per our planning. So if you're following me on the iPhone SE, this kind of area here, where it's all blue lined, this needs to be the space of our screen. This is basically what's going to be displayed when we output our project. So the SE has a height of 568 pixels and a width of 320 pixels. So let's come up to project and let's go to project settings and let's find the one that says Windows. So display window, and let's go to width of 320. Make sure you press enter, and then height of 568 and press enter. Remember, if you are trying to develop a different app, you will need to put your measurements here based on the screen size that you're trying to do. So once you've pressed enter, you can then press close, and that's all done, it saves. When you click anywhere here for the first time, it will change the screen for you. And maybe. There we go. It does take a little bit of time to refresh, but there's our screen size. You can see it's the right size for us. So over on this left hand side, we have to set our directories up. We've spent all this time creating assets, so we need to bring those assets into our project. One way of doing that is to create a new folder and do it this way. But because we've already created the folder, we can go to our page. So let's come down here and select our first app and then our assets. Now you'll see my first app is here. So that's the actual project. So this is what we're looking at over on this side. So if I click and drag this into here, it will move the folder and it will put it into my first app. So here are my assets now. Then when I click back, magically it will update it. And it's really important to know that anything you do in this folder on your actual desktop area, anything you do here, it will update it. So if you think, oh god, that asset wasn't quite right, this background asset wasn't right, and you go off to PowerPoint or whatever digital software you're using and update it, it will update it here for you. So it's really, really clever. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So we have this file here, and to prove that it's the same, if I click on the assets, you'll notice that all of my assets that I created are here and we are ready to go. So we have our assets, we have our screen size. Go ahead and do that, and I'll just pause the video for a sec. Okay, fantastic. So now let's create 2 more folders. So let's use the other method now. So let's right click, new folder. The one we want now is one called scenes. Okay, so we're going to create one called scenes, and we're going to create one called scripts. Now, okay, so we've got all our folders. Now if we go back to our folder structure again, you'll notice that those, now if I just click here, you'll notice that those folders I've just created are here again. So just showing you that it's actually working inside and out of the project, which is great. Okay, so now we've got our folders intact and we've got everything set up. It's now time to kind of save our first scene. In order to do this, we need what's called a node. Now the node is over on this right hand side here, and it's this little plus button, and this is basically everything works around nodes. Everything you add is a node, okay, but every scene must have at least one node in order for it to be saved. So press on this and you'll get this big long list. The one we want is the most basic node of all of them, and it's called the node 2D. So double click on that and then select it and click it again so we can rename it. And we're going to say this one is called our main or home scene. For me, I haven't used spaces, and I tend not to use spaces for nodes, and I've also used capitals on the letters of the first letter of each word. So just keep that in mind. When I am doing this, I do tend to not use spaces, and I tend to use capital letters for the first letter of each word. So select away from that. We now have home scene saved, so we can come up to the scene and we can say save scene. Now we want to save it into the scenes folder, and it's called home scene, so we can say save. So do that now and we'll just pause. Okay, the next thing to do is to play our scene and assign the very first scene to everything. Okay, so if we press play, you'll come into here and it says, hey, you haven't got the main scene set up, so you say select, and then it says, right, you're inside the scenes folder. If you weren't, you could just press up, go into the scenes folder, select the home scene that we've just created, and press open. Now it can run the app. So it's not a very interesting app, but you are now running an app as you would expect. So we can stop that and we're ready to go. So if you don't see that select a first scene, you can come up to the project settings, and then inside of this area here, if you go to the very top where it says config, you can actually select your first scene from this run menu. So main scene under run, and it's here. If you don't have one, you can press on this file icon, go file, go to scenes, press home. So if for some reason later on you want to change the home scene, you can do it here as well. So that's great. So now let's start putting our scenes together. So we now need to create all of the scenes. So let's go scene, new scene. The next scene we need to create is the home scene. I know we've created the home scene, it's the master scene. So press the node button, go to the 2D node. Now notice, because we've used it already, it's here, and this is really useful. So we can double click on this and it'll bring it up. So let's call this one master scene. Now the master scene is where we're going to load the template that links to all the other scenes. So we can do that. Now let's create another scene. So scene, new scene, then plus 2D node. Now let's call this one info scene. Now and go new scene, and then 2D node again. And this one is called the play scene. And that's our last one. So you'll notice that there's a star near all of these scenes, and most of them are saying unsaved, unsaved, unsaved. So what we need to do is go scene, save, scene, save, and it will say, right, what do you want to call it? And it picks out the name of that first node. So we save it as master. Then we come to this one, we go scene, save scene, info scene, great. Then we go scene, save scene. Oops, next one. Scene, save scene, and it's called play scene and save. Now, the one thing before we go any further, you need to make sure we've done is that all of your scenes are saved in the scenes folder. So you should have 4 scenes all saved in the scenes folder. Now, when you come to your digital student or your first app folder, and you go down to your scenes, you'll notice that they are all there, they're all saved, and it's all good, and we're ready to carry on. So let's close all of these up because we don't need them. Another button that you should use quite a bit once you've saved them for the first time is this save all scenes, which is really, really useful. So we want the master scene open, we don't want the home scene just yet. So we're going to put our initial bits and bobs on this master scene. Okay, so here we are on the master scene. The first thing we need to do, so if we come into our assets, we need to put this background on here. Once again, everything you do in Godot is a node. So let's come down to our nodes and let's choose the appropriate node. Now the one we want is what's called a sprite. It's worth noting that there is a 2D and a 3D sprite, okay? Because we're working in the 2D scene, you do need to make sure you choose the 2D sprite, which is just called sprite, not the 3D sprite, okay? And once again, because I've used it once, it's now over here. So we have our sprite, and we have this button down here. So these are all the inspector is all the properties for that particular thing. So if we click on the texture, it says null at the moment. And all we can do is come over to here, drag this onto that texture. Now, if it comes in too big, like this one has here, you just need to kind of get it into the right place. Not always the easiest of jobs. So what I tend to do is get it roughly right. And now if you hold down the shift button, it will constrain the axis. Now if I use these little plus buttons, I can zoom in and just get it so it's fitting the whole of the screen. So remember, the screen is that area there, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So now we've got our sprite in, or our background, we can actually rename that. Now just notice that the sprite belongs to the master. It's what's called a hierarchy, that things belong to certain things. We're not going to go too far into that, but just keep this in mind, that nodes kind of work in this hierarchical fashion. So if we click on this and we change this to background image, and we're away to go. So next thing that we need to put in then, this one is a button. So the button is actually a textured node, so textured button. So click back on the master scene, add a node, and we're going to say texture, and the one we want is textured button. The reason it's textured is because it allows us to add whatever images to that button we want. Now this is closed down at the minute, but where it says textures, drill that open, and then you have all of these presets. So the first one is normal, that's where it's not being hovered over, and then pressed and hover. So the images that we've set up are normal and hover. So if I get my home button, normal, and drop it onto the normal one there, and then I get my home button, hover, and put it on this one there. So when we run the app in just a moment, it won't work just yet because we haven't assigned this, but when we do it in a moment, we are going to be able to kind of hover over the buttons, which is great. We need to do this 3 times. So let's just change this to home button. And let's duplicate this. So you can press Control D if you like. And I've done it twice. So I'm just going to change this one to info. Get rid of that 2. Change this one to play. Get rid of that 3. Okay. Now let's just move these around so we can see which ones are which. Now, as our buttons aren't quite the right size, as you can see here, one thing you can do is if you scroll down on these textured buttons to where it says rectangle or rect, you can actually change the scale size. So let's just change ours to 0.8 on both the Y and the X axis. So 0.8, press enter, and now we get something that's going to work. So let's do that on the info button as well. So rect, scale, 0.8, enter, and let's do it on this last one as well. So play button, scale, 0.8, and press enter. Now we have the buttons roughly the right size. Let's position them where we want them. Now I'm going to put two of my buttons close together. So I'm going to have the home and the info close together, and then I'm going to have the play button over on this right hand side. So once we're there, let's just change these buttons. So I'm on the info button, scroll back up to the texture, and to replace this normal button, let's go info, drag that on the normal, and let's do the same with the hover, and then let's come over to the play button, okay, so now we've got these play buttons set up. So this is basically our master scene. We've just got to add a little bit of script at the moment. Before we do that, we need to link this master scene to all of the other scenes. Okay, so let's open up all of our scenes. So here's the home scene, here's the info scene, and here's the play scene. We've got all of our elements set up pretty much the way we want them. Remember, we can add or change this at any point, but now we're going to link it to these blank scenes. So Godot has a really fantastic method for doing this and making it very, very simple, so that you only have to kind of set this up once and then it's done for you. And then every time you have to edit it, you only have to do it once, which doesn't seem like a big thing, but trust me, if you have to do this, if you have 100 pages and you have to do this for 100 times and you think, oh God, I want to change that one thing, you have to change everything. So setting it up like this, your master slide, could save you a lot of time in the future. So here's our home scene. So the button in question is this one here that looks like a link. So we click on that, and it's just basically saying, let's link a scene to it. So the scene we want to link is under scenes, and it's the one that says master, and we press open. So as you can see, very, very simple. Now that is set up with all the same actions as before. So now let's do the same with the info screen. Now let's do the same with the play scene. Okay, once you've done that, you'll notice there's these little stars next to all of them. So we just need to go File, Save, or Scene, Save All Scenes, and it'll whiz through them. Now, let's press the play button and see what we've got. So this is our first app, and when we hover over it, the hover buttons work. Now, we can't actually get to any of these scenes, and if we could, you wouldn't notice any difference anyway. But the good thing here is we have an app that kind of works and is in a good place. So in the next video, we're just going to add a little script to make it work between the pages and add the rest of our assets.